Hi, everybody. This is Allison from Alley Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you have yet to do so. And if you get anything from my work, a Connect, Dawn, Epiphany, a Mind Explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links will be at the bottom of the description of this video underneath. It's a lot of information, but it's there. Allylattkreations211.com. There's a link on the YouTube page. You could see paint and sip paintings, signs that I make, the craft and sip signs. I sell pyramids, a lot of pyramids. I have, hang on, business card holders that are gems. You can also fit a phone in there if you want to view stuff. Patriotic skulls with some brass in there. I do hearts. This is a patriotic heart. I do a lot. I also do floral stuff. I do hyper-realistic drawings. I have my art degree from one of those fancy colleges that are private from New York. Hi. So if you're interested in anything, please email me. I do everything privately, and it helps support me, keeping me fed and keeping me alive. 3D memberships are another way to help the channel and help myself. It's not that much. And you guys get a free raffle entry every month. I'm probably going to have to skip, unfortunately, August, just due to getting back onto my feet, sort of semi, not really. Um, just trying to keep myself afloat right now. And I, and prices of shipping things are very high right now. So I might have to postpone that until September when I'm starting to get paid. Um, it is what it is. But I also do channel member only content where you guys get our oracle reading for the most part. Most of them are an hour or over of a lot. I have a lot of oracle decks, and I do a reading for the collective of members. There you get to see places and feelings of if you need to heal and all that other really amazing stuff. It take it for what it's worth. A lot of that stuff is helping people direct their lives in healing and where to move forward, and it gives some kind of motivation to do the work and to chill out. Things are crazy. So if you like to be a part of the community, I go live Tuesdays and Fridays. Tuesdays is a craft and sip. I do signs. I make really fun stuff. I hook latch. We talk spiritual. We talk, people ask me questions. Friday, I tap into the energies. We go over how everybody's feeling. The chat is like a big driving force of that. So if you're interested just to tap in to talk, I talk books too. Um, come and hang out with us. It's a really nice community and it's really fun. I'm very still English would be great if I could speak today. I'm still very much under the weather. I have a sinus infection. There's a lot of infections and sicknesses. Kids are back to school. It is going on. This is only my week too, but my goodness, um, like it hurts all in here. The jaw hurts over here, the TMJ. I'm coughing like a crazy person, but it's coming out and it's loose, so I'll take it. But my voice is a little froggy. It's been still congested. Got my tissues. Got my coffee. And I'm just catching up back on life. I also do apologize that I didn't have a reading on a Wednesday. My lawn was a jungle, and because I was very much under the weather, and it is allergies, I am allergic to a lot of the outside allergens. Um, I had Maureen, my BF, come here and help me do all that landscaping that I just really couldn't manage by myself. So I couldn't get a video in. Okay. Today we're going to do Blavatsky. We're going to pick up to where I left off the last time. Unfortunately, this stanza is ridiculously long, which is fine. I just have to cut it up, so therefore hopefully more people watch and get more inspired to read Blavatsky's work. I like her work. I'm not the best at reading her work. Um, so yeah, we're going to pick up where we left off. Okay. That the state will return to it and to the world at large when the latter shall discover and really appreciate the truths which underlie the vast problem of sex. It will be like the light that never shone on sea or land, and it has to come to men through the Theosophical Society. That light will lead on and up to the true spiritual intuition, then as expressed one in a letter to a Theosophist, the world will have a race of Buddhas and Christs, for the world will have discovered that individuals have it in their own powers to procreate Buddha-like children or demons. When that knowledge comes, all dogmatic religions, and with these, the demons will die out. If we reflect upon the serial development of the allegory and the character of the heroes, the mystery may be unriddled. Chronos is, of course, time. In its cyclic course, he swallows his children, the personal gods of exoteric dogmas included. He has swallowed instead of Zeus, his stone idol. But the symbol has grown and has only developed in human fancy. A mankind was cycling down toward only its physical and intellectual, not spiritual perfection. When it is as far advanced in its spiritual evolution, Kronos will be no longer deceived. Instead of the stone image, he will have swallowed the anthropomorphic fiction itself. Because the serpent of wisdom, represented in the Sabasin mysteries by the anthropomorphized logos, the unity of spiritual and physical powers, will have begotten in time Kronos, a progeny, Dionysus, Bacchus, or the dark Epiphos, the mighty one, the race that will overthrow him. Where will he be born? Prometheus traces him to his origin and birthplace in his prophecy to Io. Io is the moon goddess of generation, for she is Isis and she is Eve, the great mother. He traces the path of the racial wanderings as plainly as worlds can express it. She has to quit Europe and to go to Asia's continent, reaching there the highest of the mountains of the Caucasus, the Titan telling her, when thou hast crossed the flood limit betwixt two continents fronting the burning east, that she must travel eastward after passing the Cimmerian Bosphorus and cross what is evidently the Volga and now Astrakhan on the Caspian Sea. After this, she will encounter fierce northern blasts and cross thither to the land of the Armispan host, east of the Herodotus Scythia, Plato's gold abounding flood, which is rightly conjectured by Professor Newman to have meant the Uriel, the Arma Spa of Herodotus. I'm butchering shit right now, so I do apologize. Being the recognized inhabitants of the Golden region. And here comes between verses 825 and 835, a puzzle to all the European interpreters, says the Titan. To these approach not a far border land. Thou next wilt reach, where dwells a swarthy race, near the sun's fronts, where the Athiop River along its banks proceed till thou obtain the mighty rapids where the Bybline heights, pure draughts of sacred water, Neleos sends. There Io was ordained to found a colony for herself and sons. Now we must see how the passage is interpreted. As Io is told that she has to travel eastward till she comes to the river Ethiops, I want to, yeah, whatever, which which she is to follow till it falls into the Nile, hence the perplexity. According to the geographical theories of the earliest Greeks, we are informed by the author of the version of the Prometheus Bound. This condition was fulfilled by the rivers Indus. Arrian mentions that Alexander the Great, when preparing to sail down the Indus, having seen crocodiles in the river Indus and in no other river except the Nile, seemed to himself to have discovered the sources of the Nile, as though the Nile rising from some place in India and flowing through such a much desert land, and thereby losing its name Indus, next flowed through inhabited land, being now called the Nile by the Ethiopians of those parts and afterwards by the Egyptians. Virgil, in the fourth Georgic, echoes the absolute error. Both Alexander and Virgil may have erred considerably in their geographical notions, but the prophecy of Prometheus has not so sinned in the least, not at any rate, in its esoteric spirit. When a certain race is symbolized and events pertaining to its history are rendered allegorically, no topographical accuracy ought to be expected in the initiatory trace for its personification. Yet it so happens that the river Epos is certainly the Indus, and it is also the Nile or Nil. It is the river born on the Calais Heaven Mountain, the mansion of the gods, 22,000 feet above the sea level of the sea. It was the Epos River and was so called by the Greeks long before the days of Alexandria because its banks from Attok down to Sind were peopled by tribes generally referred to as the Eastern Ethiopians. India and Egypt were two kindred nations, and the Eastern Ethiopians, the mighty builders, have come from India, as it is pretty well proved, it is hoped, in Isis unveiled. Interesting. Then why could not Alexander and even the learned Virgil have used the word Nile or Neleos when speaking of the Indus, since it is one of its names? To this day, that river is called in the regions around Calabar Blue, Nila, the Blue River. The water here is of such dark blue color that the name given to it from time immemorial led to a small town on its banks being called by the same name. It exists to this day. Evidently, Arrian, who wrote far later than the day of Alexander, and who was ignorant of the old name of the Indus, has unconsciously slandered the Greek conqueror. Nor are our modern historians much wiser in judging as they do, for they often make their most sweeping declarations on mere appearances as much as their ancient colleagues ever did in the days of old, when no cyclopedias were yet ready for them. The race of Io, the cow-horned maid, is then simply the first pioneer race of the Ethiopians, brought by her from the Indus to the Nile, which received its name in memory of the mother river of the colonists from India. For does not Prometheus say to Io that the sacred Neleos, the god, not the river, he to the land, three-cornered, thee shall guide, namely to the delta, where her sons are foreordained to follow, and to found that far-off colony. It is there that a new race, the Egyptians, will begin, and a female race, which fifth in descent from dark Epios. 50 in number shall return to Argos. Then one of the 50 virgins will fail through love, and shall a kingly race in Argos bear. But from this seed shall dauntless heroes spring, thou famous, who shall free me from these ills. When this hero shall arise, the Titan does not reveal, for as he remarks, this to set forth at large needs lengthy speech. But Argos in Aryavarsha, the land of liberation of the old Hierophants, whose the deliverers of humanity, will appear a name which became ages later that of its neighbor India, the Aryavarta of old. And I hope I didn't butcher that. That the subject formed part of the Sabassian mysteries is made known by several ancient writers, by Cicero and by Clemens Alexandrinus. The latter writers are the only ones who attribute the fact that Asclepius was charged by the Athenians with sacrilege and condemned to be stoned to death to its true cause. I was stoned to death. They say that having been himself uninitiated, Asclepius had profaned the mysteries by exposing them in his trilogies on a public stage, but he would have incurred the same condemnation had he been initiated, which must have been the case, as otherwise he must, like Socrates, have had a daemon to reveal to him the secret and sacred allegorical drama of initiation. At all events, it is not the father of the Greek tragedy who invented the prophecy of Prometheus, for he only repeated in dramatic form that which was revealed by the priests during the mysteria of the Sabbatia. The latter, however, is one of the oldest sacred festivals, whose origin is to this day unknown to history. Mythologists connect it with through Mithras, the sun called Sabazius, on some old monuments, with Jupiter and Bacchus. But it was never the property of the Greeks, but dates from days immemorial. The translators of the drama wonder how Asclepius could have become guilty of such discrepancy between the character of Zeus as portrayed in the Prometheus Bound and that depicted in the remaining dramas. This is just because Asclepius, like Shakespeare, was and will ever remain the intellectual sphinx of the ages. Between Zeus, the abstract deity of Grecan thought, and the Olympic Zeus, there was an abyss. The latter represents, during the mysteries, no higher a principle than the lowest aspect of human physical intelligence. Manas wedded to kama. Prometheus is divine aspect merging into and aspiring to Buddhi, the divine soul. Zeus was a human soul and nothing more. Whenever shown yielding to his lower passions, the jealous god, revengeful and cruel in his egotism, or I amness. Hence, Zeus is represented as a serpent, the intellectual tempter of man, which nevertheless begets in the course of cyclic evolution the man savior. The solar Bacchus, or the Dionysos, more than a man. Dionysos is one with Osiris, with Krishna, and with Buddha, the heavenly wise, and with the coming 10th avatar, the glorified spiritual Christos, who will deliver the suffering Christos, mankind of Prometheus, on its trail. This said, Brahminical and Buddhistic legends, echoed by the Zoroastrian and now by the Christian teachings, the latter only occasionally, will happen at the end of the Kali Yuga. It is only after the appearance of Kalkic, I don't know how to pronounce that, avatar, or another name I'm not even going to attempt, that man will be born from woman without sin. Then will Brahma, the Hindu deity, Ahura Mazda, or Asmand, the Zoroastrian Zeus, the Greco-Olympian Don Juan, Carlos Castaneda, here we are, Jehovah, the jealous, repenting, cruel tribal god of the Israelites, and all their likes in the universal pantheon of human fancy vanish and disappear in thin air. And along with these will vanish their shadows, the dark aspects of all those deities ever represented as their twin brothers and creatures in exoteric legend, their own reflection on earth in esoteric philosophy. The Ahrimans and Typhons and the Samaels and Satans must be all dethroned on that day when every dark evil passion will be subdued. Is that happening right now? Pause, time out, time out, time out, time out. We are living in this epoch that we are going back in understanding. Sorry, I have to do this. This is upstairs. So we're reliving Greek and Roman structures because that is what's based on our world right now. We're in the Roman Empire right now. If you look at the United States as an example, most of our architecture that is very hard to actually reproduce by modern machinery is Greek Roman designs, architecture. Our courthouses, some schoolhouses, governmental buildings are structured after the Greeks and Romans. So we're living again in that epoch. Fast forward, doing everything twice. For some of us that are in the understanding of divine neutrality and understanding that we have a shadow side and a light side and that we have to balance both and we can't ignore or neglect the dark within or the light within, we have to coexist in harmony with both states within our being. In the external world outside of us, what was just said is starting to happen. And the woman avatar that is, I don't think it's a person. I think it's a collective of women. It's the Aquarian age. It's a feminine sign. We're moving into the waters, into the air, into the breath of life, into the waters of transmutation. We're going through the fire and the earth section right now. Things are being, and the women are coming into their own, and we're the ones really leading the intuitive way to harmonizing the masculine and the feminine to bring it into balance, not necessarily to overwhelm everything with feminism or femininity. We're trying to balance it out because we need both. The Aquarian age is really the woman. So if we're looking at avatars and we're looking for a one, sin to me is an illusion. It doesn't exist. You're either a righteous walking human being you're not flawless, you're not perfect, you're walking a path of enlightenment. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna have experience. You have soul contracts that sometimes you're gonna be the devil in someone's story. Sorry, truth. But I don't know if we're looking anymore at a deity of one. We are all one, scientifically, quantumly stating, in my estimation, in my opinion. I'm not asking anybody to hard align with anything that I'm saying. I'm just putting this out there from upstairs. You believe me or not. There is one eternal law in nature, one that always tends to adjust contraries and to produce final harmony. It is owing to this law of spiritual development, superseding the physical and purely intellectual, that mankind will become freed from its false gods and find itself finally self-redeemed. In its final revelation, the old myth of Prometheus, his proto and antitypes, being found in every ancient theogony, stands in each of them at the very origin of physical evil, because at the threshold of human physical life, Chronos is time, whose first law is that the order of the successive and harmonious phases in the process of evolution during cyclic development should be strictly preserved under the severe penalty of abnormal growth with all its ensuing results. It was not in the program of natural, I love how she just said that, program of natural development that man, higher animal, though he may be, should become at once intellectually, spiritually, and psychically the demigod he is on earth, while his physical frame remains weaker and more helpless and ephemeral than that of almost any huge mammal. The contrast is too grotesque and violent. The tabernacle must too unworthy of its indwelling God. The gift of Prometheus thus became a curse, though foreknown and foreseen by the host personified in that personage, as his name well shows. It is in this that rests at one and the same time its sin and in its redemption. For the host that incarnated in a portion of humanity, though led to it by karma or nemesis, preferred free will to passive slavery, intellectual self-conscious pain, and even torture, while myriad time shall flow to inane, imbecile, instinctual beatitude. Knowing such an incarnation was premature and not in the program, love that, of nature, the heavenly host. Prometheus still sacrificed itself to benefit thereby at least one portion of mankind, but while saving man from mental darkness, they inflicted upon him the tortures of the self-consciousness of his responsibility, the result of his free will, besides every ill to which mortal man and flesh are heir to. This torture Prometheus accepted for himself, since the host became henceforward blended with the tabernacle prepared for them, which was still unachieved at the period of formation. Spiritual evolution being incapable of keeping pace with the physical, once its homogeneity was broken by the admixture, the gift thus became the chief cause, if not the sole origin of evil. The allegory which shows Kronos cursing Zeus for dethroning him in the primitive golden age of Saturn, when all men were demigods, and for creating a physical race of men weak and helpless in comparison, and then as delivering to his Zeus revenge the culprit who despoiled the gods of their prerogative of creation and who thereby raised men to their level intellectually and spiritually, is highly Philosophical. In the case of Prometheus, Zeus represents the host of the primeval progenitors of the Pitar, the fathers, who created man senseless. O holy ether, swiftly winged gales, behold what I, a god from gods, endure. And yet what say I, clearly I foreknew all that must happen. The destined it behooves, as best I may, to bear, for well I wot how incontestable the strength of fate. Fate stands here for karma or nemesis. Mankind is obviously divided into God-informed men and lower human creatures. The intellectual difference between the Aryan and other civilized nations and such savages as the South Sea Islanders is inexplicable on any other grounds. No amount of culture nor generations of training amid civilization could raise such human specimens as the Bushmen, the Vedas of Ceylon, and some African tribes to the same intellectual level as the Aryans, the Semites, and the Turanians, so called. The sacred spark missing in them, and it is they who are the only inferior races on the globe now happily owning to the wise adjustment of nature, whichever works in that direction, fast dying out. Verily, mankind is of one blood, but not of the same essence. We are the hothouse, artificially quickened plants in nature, having in us a spark which in them is latent. I call BS on that. I don't agree. The philosophical view of Indian metaphysics places the root of evil in the differentiation of the homogeneous into the heterogeneous of the unit in plurality. And without any mind, while the divine titan stands for the spiritual creators, the devas who fell into generation, the former are spiritually lower but physically stronger than the Prometheans. Therefore, the latter are shown conquered. The lower host, whose work the titan spoiled and thus defeated the plans of Zeus, was on this earth in its own sphere and plane of action, whereas a superior host was an exile from heaven who had got entangled into the meshes of matter. They, the inferior hosts, were masters of all the cosmic and lower titanic forces. We could say that, potentially. The higher Titan possessed only the intellectual and spiritual fire. The strama of the struggle of Prometheus with the Olympic tyrant and despot, sensual Zeus, one sees enacted daily within our actual mankind. The lower passions chain the higher aspirations to the rock of matter. A generate in many a case, the vulture of sorrow, pain, and repentance. In every such case, one sees more. A god in fetters, anguish, fraught, the foe of Zeus in hatred held by all. A god bereft even of that supreme consolidation of Prometheus, who suffered in self-sacrifice. For that to men he bare too fond a mind, as the divine Titan is moved by altruism, but the mortal man by selfishness and egotism in every instance. The modern Prometheus has now become Epimetheus, he who sees only after the event. Because the universal philanthropy of the former has long ago degenerated into selfishness and self-abnegation, man will re-become the free Titan of old, but not before cyclic evolution has reestablished the broken harmony between the two natures, the terrestrial and the divine, after which he becomes impermeable to the lower titanic forces, invulnerable in his personality and immortal in his individuality. which cannot happen before every animal element is eliminated from his nature. When man understands that Deus non ficit mortem, but that man has created it himself, he will re-become the Prometheus before his fall. For the full symbolism of Prometheus and the origin of this mythos in Greece, the reader is referred to part 2 of the volume chapter, A Second Key to Prometheus. In the said part, a kind of supplement to the present portion, every additional information is given upon those tenets that will be the most controverted and questioned. This work is so heterodox when confronted with the acknowledgement standards of theology and modern science, that no proof which tends to show that these standards often usurp an illegal authority should be neglected. Interesting. Freya came to say hi to everybody. Hi, Freya. Bye, Freya. So that ends that little section there. But I'm going to read a little bit further because there's an additional fragments from commentary on the verses of stanza 12. This goes on for a long while. So we're going to go a little half into this, and then next time we will pick up again. And once again, I am sorry if I'm butchering any language names. There's going to be a bunch in here that I'm going to butcher. So just keep that in mind. The MS from which these additional explanations are taken belongs to the group called Tong Shakshi Sangi Songa, or the records of the 35 Buddhas of confession, as they are exoterically called. These personages, however, though called in the northern Buddhist region Buddhas, may just as well be called rishis or avatars, as they are Buddhas who have preceded Sakyamuni, only for the northern followers of the ethics preached by Gautama. These great Mahatmas or Buddhas are a universal and common property. They are historical sages, at any rate, for all the occultists who believe in such a hierarchy of sages, the existence of which has been proved to them by the learned ones of the fraternity. They are chosen from among some 97 Buddhas in one group and 53 in another, mostly imaginary personages who are really the personifications of the powers of the first name. These baskets of the oldest writings on palm leaves are kept very secret. Each MS has appended to it a short synopsis of the history of that subrace to which the particular Buddha Lea belonged. The one special MS, from which the fragments which follow are extracted and then rendered into more comprehensible language, is said to have been copied from the stone tablets which belong to the Buddha of the earliest day of the fifth race, who had witnessed the deluge and the submersion of the chief continents of the Atlantean race. The day when much, if not all, of that which is given here from the archaic records will be found correct is not far distant. Then the modern symbologists will acquire the certitude that even Odin, or the god Woden, the highest god in the Germanic and Scandinavian mythology, is one of these 35 Buddhas. One of the earliest indeed, for the continent to which he and his race belonged is also one of the earliest. So early in truth that in the days when tropical nature was to be found, where now lie eternal unthawing snows, one could cross almost by dry land from Norway via Iceland and Greenland, to the lands that his presence surrounded Hudson's Bay. Just as in the palmy days of the Atlantean giants, the giants from the east, a pilgrim could perform a journey from what is in our day termed the Sahara Desert to the lands which now rest in dreamless sleep at the bottom of the waters of the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea. Events which were never written outside the human memory, but which were religiously transmitted from one generation to another and from race to race, may have been preserved by constant transmission within the book of volume of the brain and through countless eons, with more truth and accuracy than inside any written document or record. That which is part of our souls is eternal, says Thackeray, and that what can be nearer to our souls than that which happens at the dawns of our lives? Those lives are countless, but the soul or spirit that animates us throughout these myriad of existences is the same. And though the book and volume of the physical brain may forget events within the scope of one terrestrial life, the bulk of collective recollections can never desert the divine soul within us. Its whispers may be too soft, the sound of it words too far off the plane perceived by our physical senses, yet the shadow of events that were just as much as the shadow of the events that are to come is within its perspective powers and is ever present before its mind's eye. It is a soul's voice, perhaps, which tells those who believe in tradition more than in written history that what is said below is all true and relates to prehistoric facts. This is what is written in one passage. The kings of light have departed in wrath. The sins of man have become so black that earth quivers in her in her great agony. The azure seats remain empty. Who of the brown, who of the red, or yet among the black races can sit in the seats of the blessed, the seats of knowledge and mercy? Who can assume the flower of power, the plant of the golden stem and the azure blossom? And just to pause here for a second, if you go into both the Arantia and the Awaspi books, you're going to find that they section off races by color, and that's not necessarily a racist type thing. It's just an observation. So anybody that's listening to this that's a little sensitive, this is the way people spoke at that time. And Ashiana Dean and a bunch of others, the races were red being Native Americans, Aborigines. It's not to pinpoint or pick out anything. And also, a lot of the people that have written these books or channels of this work, in my estimation, were indoctrinated in a program that happened to be Darwinism. Great old Darwin ruined a lot of things for our literary purposes, because you even see in her work that they're claiming tribes in Africa and other spots that makes them inferior when they're not. And I don't kind of understand that logic, or just because you don't understand another human culture or how they go about doing life as humans doesn't mean that makes them inferior or superior to you. We're all the same. We just live individuated and differentiated in society. They might look at us and think, we're lowest on the food chain. And when we stop looking at people as lower or inferior to superior, they could survive a lot more. I bet you if you took anybody from the city that's never been camping before and doesn't know how to start a fire and do some knot work and catch their own food, I bet you they would not survive very far and long. It just everybody has a purpose and a need, and it's God's kingdom, and we have to start looking at things in that context. But just to put what I'm reading here into context, a lot of races were delineated in literary works as colors. The Kings of Light is the name given in all old records to the sovereigns of the divine dynasties. The azure seats are translated celestial thrones in certain documents. The flower of power is now the lotus. When it may have been at the period, who can tell? The writer proceeds like the latter Jeremiah to bewail the fate of his people. They had become bereft of their azure, celestial kings, and they of the diva hue, the moonlight complexion, and they of the refulgent golden face have gone to the land of bliss, the land of metal and fire. Or agreeably with the rules of symbolism to the lands lying north and east from whence the great waters have been swept away, sucked in by the earth and dissipated in the air. The wise races have perceived the black storm dragons called down by the dragons of wisdom and had fled, led on by the shining protectors of the most excellent land. The great ancient adepts, presumably those the Hindus refer to as the Manus and the Rishis, one of them, that long V name, Manu. They of the yellow hue are the forefathers of those whom ethnology, that's not coming out of my sick ass, now classes as the Turanians and the Mongols, Chinese, and other ancient nations. And the land they fled to was no other than Central Asia. Their entire new races were born. There they lived and died until the separation of the nations. But this separation did not take place either in the localities assigned for it by modern science, nor in the way the Aryans are shown to have divided and separated by Mr. Max Mueller and other Aryanists. Nearly 2/3 of 1 million years have elapsed since that period. The yellow-faced giants of the post-Atlantean day had ample time throughout this forced confinement to one part of the world, and with the same racial blood and without any flesh infusion or mixture in it, to branch off during a period of nearly 700,000 years into the most heterogeneous and diversified types. The same is shown in Africa. Nowhere does a more extraordinary viability of types existed, from black to almost white, from gigantic men to dwarfish races, and this only because their forced isolation. The Africans have never left their continent for several hundred thousands of years. If tomorrow the continent of Europe were to disappear and other lands to reemerge instead, and if the African tribes were to separate and scatter on the face of the earth, it is they who, in about 100,000 years hence, would form the bulk of the civilized nations. And it is the descendants of those of our highly cultured nations who might have survived on some one island without any means of crossing the new seas that would fall back into a state of relative savagery. Thus, the reason given for dividing humanity into superior and inferior races falls to the ground and becomes a fallacy. I agree with that. Such are the statements made and facts given in the archaic records correlating and comparing them with some modern theories of evolution minus natural selection. These statements appear quite reasonable and logical. Thus, while the Aryans are the descendants of the yellow Adams, the gigantic and highly civilized Atlantio-Aryan race, the Semites, and the Jews along with them are those of the red Adam, and those both of Quatrephage and the writers of the Mosaic Genesis are right. For could chapter 5 of the first book of Moses be compared with the genealogies found in our archaic Bible, the period from Adam unto Noah would be found noticed therein, of course, under different names, the respective years of the patriarchs being turned into periods, who the whole being shown symbolical and allegorical. In the MS under consideration, many and frequent are the references to the great knowledge and civilization of the Atlantean nations, showing the polity of several of them and the nature of their arts and sciences. If the third root race, the Lemurio-Atlanteans, are already spoken of as having been drowned with their high civilizations and gods, how much more may the same be said of the Atlanteans? It is from the fourth race that the early Aryans got their knowledge of the bundle of wonderful things, the Sabha and the Maya Sabha, mentioned in the Mahabharata, the gift of Marasura to the Pravadas. It is from them that they learnt aeronautics, Viwan Vida, the knowledge of flying in the air vehicles, and therefore their great arts of meteorography and meteorology. It is from them, again, that the Aryans inherited their most valuable science of the hidden virtues of precious and other stones of chemistry, or rather alchemy, or mineralogy, geology, physics, and astronomy. Several times the writer has put to herself the question, is the story of Exodus, in its details, at least as narrated in the Old Testament, original? Or is it, like the story of Moses himself and many others, simply another version of the legends told of the Atlanteans? For who, upon hearing the story told of the latter, will fail to perceive the great similarity of the fundamental features? The anger of God at the adversary of Pharaoh, his command to the chosen ones to spoil the Egyptians before departing of their jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And finally, the Egyptians of their Pharaoh drowned in the Red Sea. For here is a fragment of the earlier story from the commentary. And the great king of the dazzling face, the chief of all the yellow face, was sad, seeing the sins of the black face. He sent his air vehicles to all his brother chiefs, chiefs of other nations and tribes, with pious men within, saying, prepare, arise, ye men of the good law, and cross the land while yet dry. The lords of the storm are approaching. Their chariots are nearing the land. 1 night and 2 days only shall the lords of the dark face, the sorcerers, live on this patient land. She is doomed, and they have to descend with her. The neither lords of the fires, the gnomes and the fire elementals, are preparing their magic, fire weapons worked by magic, but the lords of the dark eye, evil eye, are stronger than they, the elementals, and they are the slaves of the mighty ones. They are versed in Ashtar. Vidya, the highest magical knowledge. Oops, Palladians. Come and use your magic powers, in order to counteract those of sorcerers. Let every lord of the dazzling face and adept of the white magic cause the Veywan of every lord of the dark face to come into his hands or possession. Let lest any of the sorcerers should by its means escape from the waters, avoid the rod of the four karmic deities, and saved his wicked followers or people. May every yellow face send sleep from himself mesmerize to every black face. May even the sorcerers avoid pain and suffering. May every man true to the solar gods bind, paralyze every man under the lunar gods, lest he should suffer or escape his destiny. And may every yellow face offer his life water blood to the speaking animal of the black face, lest he awaken his master. The hour has struck, the black night is ready. I'm going to leave that here. It's getting late and I do have work in the morning. I will pick up next time. I'm going to write it. Yeah, this card seriously pulled out with my Post-it. It takes time. Page. I have it down now. I won't forget. I also just want to say today would have been, well, today is my father's 20-year transcension anniversary. His passing happened 20 years ago. And what a crazy day today has been. Um, Again, sorry for the congestion and hard reading of words. I'm doing my best in the conditions that I'm in, but I just want to thank everybody for showing up and for liking, sharing, subscribing. Thank you. I'm doing everything I can to keep afloat and keep going and moving forward. So I want to thank all of you for helping me do that. Sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within. Be the shoulder. Be the lighthouse. Seed your truths. Light that path forward. Chicken. Chicken. Check out my website. Check out all the fun things that I do on this channel. Check out a live if you're interested. And I hope to see you all in the next one. Thank you for watching. Just be patient with my uploads. Things are crazy and hard right now. So just doing the best that I can. I hope you are doing fabulous and be safe, be seen wherever you are in this world, and have a blessed and beautiful day. Bye for now.